Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. Here we will discuss the best options for the captaincy for the season opening set of fixtures. My name is Joe and joining me each week this season to discuss the best armband candidates is Fantasy Football Scout Deputy Editor Tom Freeman. Tom, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Joe. 3 days to go. It's getting very real now. But yeah, it's busy on the site. Loads of pre-season coverage going up. Scout reports on all the new signings. So looking forward to it. Excited.
Good stuff. And I know something we'll talk about during the show is the pre-season content. I know I flagged it up on the Scoutcast last night as well, but yourself and Neil have been compiling that, so it'll be good to get a bit more on that. So first off, I have had about 1 million players in my team, well, about 50 over the course of the summer, in and out, all changing, different strategies. One thing has not changed. That has been Mohamed Salah has been in my team and he's always had the captain armband. I have not wavered once iota since June the 20, whenever it was, the game launched. So let's put a picture of him up. And the simple question is, Liverpool, arguably the best fixture against Norwich. I expect Salah to be well captained. Is that for good reason? Or is Mane a better option? Anyway, Salah for the armband. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the matchup is really appealing. It ticks a lot of boxes. Norwich, they came up from the Championship with a respectable defensive record. I think they kept about 18 clean sheets, which was a little bit short of Watford, but still okay. But they have had pre-season issues. They had a COVID outbreak recently, which I think Daniel Farkas spoke quite extensively about after the friendly at the weekend, saying it had really disrupted them, had an effect on their fitness. They've also had their centre-back partnership last year when they came up was Hanley and Gibson. Now, Hanley hasn't been able to play any pre-season minutes. Gibson, I think, played the first game at the weekend. So there's issues at the back, which may open up a start for the £4 million centre-back. And I know Farker has experimented with a 3 a little bit as well. So I think a lot points towards Salah. With that, Norwich, they had a pre-season friendly at the weekend. They lost 3-0 to Newcastle. I'm not sure how much you read into friendlies, Joe, but, you've got to take all that information on board. Mm-hmm. And I think, Salah's records speak for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, I look at it for form, and if we are looking at form, and we do want to captain a Liverpool player, Mane's been scoring, Jota's been scoring, Firmino's been scoring, but Salah hasn't been scoring. So is Salah really the best Liverpool asset? Should we be looking at Mane? While you talk, I've got some stats I'll put up on the screen. I've just pulled out some sort of potential captaincy options, and this is their expected goal involvement over last season. So yeah, is Mane or someone else? Mane really, would he be a good alternative to Salah?
I think he's quite an interesting alternative. He had a difficult season last year, but he did pick up towards the end. He actually finished quite strongly with a few goals and assists. He's got very low ownership in the game at the moment. I don't think we should read too much into that at the moment, but it's just interesting. I think he's sat in under 5% of teams at the moment. And he's had a good pre-season, like you say. He's been assisting, he's scored. I'm pretty sure he scored against Stuttgart and I think Hertha Berlin as well. Mm. So he looks good in that aspect. But the key thing with Salah is the penalties. If Milner isn't on the pitch, which we don't think he will be. This Robertson injury has maybe thrown up a spot at left back, but the general consensus amongst the fans is that Simiakis will get the nod there. He performed well last night in a pre-season friendly. So I think Salah definitely Salah's got the edge there for me, but that's not to say Mane isn't a good option in his own right.
Yeah, no, I think he is. I know on the Scoutcast last night, Mane was in Andy's team, and I thought it was quite a shrewd move. Because he has been. Mane has been good for a number of seasons, and last season he arguably had that dip. But by his standards, but he still did well. So the expected goal involvement, Salah is top. This is why everyone's considering him. Expected to be involved in 26 goals last season. He scored 22 and 5 assists, so pretty much on course really. But then moving down, Firmino, not too shabby though. Just 7 assists and 11 goals, but he was expected to have been involved in getting on for 20 goals. So, even by his standard, that's a poor season for Mane, but it's still pretty good. Firmino, not to be ignored. I don't know whether Firmino or Jota will start, but there's certainly evidence there. I think I'm quite a safe manager. I'm going to captain Salah, and I imagine you probably will as well. But there are other managers out there who are thinking, no, I want to do something a bit different. I want to try and do something different for the first game week. I think Mane could be the one.
Yeah, I think there's definite merit in looking at him. I think that what you spoke about Firmino and Jota then, and that's the difficult one, isn't it? Because I think everybody had thought Jota was in line to start. He'd been performing well in pre-season, and then Firmino pops up last night with a couple against Osasuna, and it just makes you think, just makes you question it a little bit. So I think Salah's the standout this week. But if you do fancy doing something a little bit different, then I can totally see the appeal in somebody like Mane as well.
Certainly, and also what we think about left and the right as well. So I'm trying to remember where. So Salah, you would imagine being fed by Alexander-Arnold. Is that right? And then Mane would be fed by Simiakis or whoever's replacing Robertson. So do you think that is an issue as well?
Well, I think Mane improves with Alexander-Arnold on the pitch because of those diagonal balls that he plays to him across it. So I really like that kind of setup when they play. Is the lack of Robertson going to affect Salah? We don't know. I mean, Simiakis put in a lovely ball for Firmino last night and assisted. I don't think he's at the levels of Robertson. I don't think we need to look too deep into that at the moment. I think it's an interesting point, but yeah, I mean, in terms of the matchups, we've got Mane up against Aarons at Norwich. Salah will be up against the left back Giannoulis. I think there's interesting points for Mane, but I do think Salah is just a little bit clear this week.
Yeah. I mean, the stats point to it. It's the fixture as well. In the chat as well. Now, I haven't verified this, so John has in the chat has caught me off guard. But Salah didn't score in pre-season last season, he was saying. Then scored a hat-trick against Leeds. So we know about the hat-trick against Leeds, but I haven't got to hand the pre-season for last year.
No, I'm not that organised.
No,
I've got this season.
No,
but
you put us on the spot there, John. So I'm going to sort of take your word for that, but it's something to look into.
I think it's a really good point. It highlights what Salah is capable of and how much we should read into pre-season as well. It's a very different game in game week one. Friendly's so many substitutions. The teams are changing their teams within 60 minutes of the match. So we all know what Salah can do. I think a few people went with Aubameyang last year in game week one and found out the hard way about that. So. It's quite clear for me.
Okay, well let's move on. There's a couple of other names in this expected goal involvement table from last season. Vernon Mount. I don't anticipate many captaining them, but I wanted to highlight them because of Chelsea and Chelsea at home to Palace. It looks very enticing, but who to captain for them? So. Lukaku, I think it's been said that he's not going to be ready for a game or two for them. So that's unlikely. Chelsea options. I mean, are they worth considering? And who would be the best one to captain?
I think for me, you'd be looking at Havertz. And I do like the matchup. Palace, they've got a lot of new signings in, new manager. I'm not quite convinced about the midfield setup they've got if they'll offer enough protection. So it is a very good fixture for a very good Chelsea side. I like Havertz. We ran a great expectations piece on the site on him over the summer, trying to look at if he could break out and have that really good season when he hits 20 goals. Now, you mentioned Lukaku there, Joe, and that is obviously going to impact him. He had a tough season last year, Havertz, for most of it. Under Lampard, he struggled. He then had COVID and long COVID, I think, as well. He then got injured when Tuchel came in, but then once he got fit again, he really settled into that 3-4-2-1 system. He was playing as a false nine, bit of a number 10 as well. But Lukaku, you've got to think he's going to take the number 9 spot when he's ready.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
With Havertz kind of dropping him behind. But for this match, perhaps that isn't an issue. You would be surprised. I mean, there's a Super Cup match tomorrow. We would be surprised if Lukaku features at the weekend. I don't even think the signing's been confirmed yet from their end. So I think there's a lot going for Havertz. He put up great numbers towards the end of last season. It's just always that risk and that element in the back of your mind. You know, you just early substitution maybe. You know, I would be happy having Havertz in my team this week, but for captaincy, maybe a bit too much of a stretch, I think.
Yeah, I think it is as well. And also, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of chat at the moment about Salah for the captaincy, and it is just that fear of missing out. We know what he can do. We know what he did last season at the beginning, and he starts seasons well. You've got to be brave, and I say brave. Yeah. That makes it sound like it's a negative to Captain Salah, like you're somehow not brave, but you. Maybe mad is maybe a better word to not captain Salah. There are other options, and let's put this fella up, Fernandes. He's hair raising. I've got the picture of him in here. He's very hair raising. So he is at home to an attacking but very porous Leeds side. Fernandes has a double-digit haul in him, as we know. All it takes is a penalty, a few bonus. There we go. Could he be the captain that gets away from us all in game week 1? What do you think? Fernandes for the armband?
Yeah, I think behind Salah, he would probably be my number two choice this week. He did really well against Leeds in the reverse fixture last year. And I think Leeds, my perception was that they improved defensively as the season went on. I think Seb had maybe said that they were a little bit fortunate at times in the second half of last season, but certainly looking at the goals conceded column, it seemed to improve anyway. And they did look vulnerable quite often from set plays as well. Fernandes is probably going to be on free kicks. I think Shaw's taken up most of the corners these days, but he might be there on 1 or 2. He's got the penalties, like you say. And, the thing is with Leeds is it's a bit non-negotiable in the Bielsa. They play in that set way, don't they? They're going to attack. They're going to get bodies forward. And that might play into Fernandes' hands. So I think I think he's a very, very good option this week. I don't think, not quite Salah levels, but there's certainly a lot going for him. Yeah,
he's my vice captain at the moment. I can, if something happened with Salah, he didn't play for whatever reason. I always feel confident with Fernandes as a vice captain. If not a captain other weeks. So he feels reliable, doesn't he? Doesn't feel
I think so. Yeah, and there was the talk in the pre-season about United moving to a 4-3-3, and the immediate response was that Bruno's going to be shifted a bit deeper. But certainly on the evidence of the weekend, United played Everton in a pre-season friendly. They beat them 4-0. Fernandes scored. He was very advanced. He was getting into the box. Certainly no evidence of that at the moment. And I think, he looks a good option this week. And like you, Joe, I'll be sticking the vice on him as well, I think.
Let's go back to those stats again. See to highlight Fernandes there. He's just behind Salah in terms of expected goal involvement, and above Kane, above Vardy, above Mane, and of course those Chelsea lads, Werner and Mount, who we don't anticipate many captaining. Let's look back at the fixtures then, because because of Salah's dominance, we can see that in the Fantasy Football Scout poll for the captaincy. And the chat on Twitter. He's going to be the top choice, you would imagine. But looking at the fixtures, there are other options there. So just looking at them, are there any other, for those who want to live life a bit dangerously, any other potential armband options there?
I think the other fixture which we haven't talked about, which stands out, is probably that Leicester Wolves fixture. They won at the weekend. They won the Community Shield. I think they've made some good signings, and Leicester normally start pretty well under Rodgers. So looking at that fixture, then you start looking at Leicester's options. Well, Iheanacho, I don't think is an option now because they've shifted formation, or at least it looks that way. They've been playing a 4-2-3-1, which means there's only room for one forward, and that has been Vardy in pre-season. So then you start looking at other options. Vardy, I don't think has quite looked himself for a while now, to be honest. So I'm not quite as keen on that. I like Harvey Barnes a lot. Looks lively. I think people forget how well he did last year before he got injured under Rodgers. There was a spell of 10 or 11 games where he was really doing well. I think the opposition, Wolves, have got a new manager, Bruno Lage, who likes to get his fullbacks high up the pitch, and that might play into somebody like Barnes' hands. Would I captain him again? No, I wouldn't.
No.
But if you're asking me...
potentially own him, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Vardy, I'm not so keen on this week, but certainly from that Leicester match. The Leicester match would be the fixture I'd be looking at outside of the three we mentioned before.
Okay. Any others there? I mean, Antonio against Newcastle, Wilson against West Ham. He's got a record there, hasn't he?
Two good options up front, definitely. Yeah, I mean, what do you think about the Spurs City game, Joe? Have you is that too tough, too close a match up? Or?
It's too tough to call, and when matches are too tough to call, I don't mind owning players there, but captaincy when you've got Salah against a promoted side, indeed Manchester United against Leeds, Spurs Manchester City. Yeah, I mean there are options though, aren't there? Ferran Torres could be up front. Mahrez could be a massively good option, and we don't anticipate Kane to play. Apparently he's going to be back in training, but so it looks like Son will be up front, and Son has scored, I think it's 6 goals against Man City in his career, 3 in the Champions League and 3 in the league. So he's not a stranger to scoring against Man City, and they are at home and they'll have fans, and sometimes the Spurs fans aren't happy, but they could be happy this time. But yeah, what do you reckon? Would you consider any Spurs or City?
City, I'd be looking at Mahrez. I think he's had a good pre-season. He's been getting minutes, and I think with doubts over Foden and De Bruyne, I think you would expect him to start. I think that one probably on penalties too. You'd think. So Mahrez would be my pick from City. From Spurs, I think it'd have to be Son, wouldn't it? Like you say, Kane. There's there's talk of him getting back into training, but I would be very surprised if he's ready to play at the weekend. Son up front, but it's against a City defence which was pretty damn good last year, wasn't it? Yeah. So I don't think I think Son might come into the conversation game week 3, 4, 5 possibly, by which point Kane might be playing again. So and that's why I'm a bit hesitant about putting Son into my team at the moment. I considered him for my game week 1 team, but I'm thinking if Kane starts training again and comes back at kind of game week 3, I think he would always be my preferred captain over Son. So that's what I mean. We're all going through this at the moment with our game week 1 teams, aren't we? We're kind of probably overthinking a little bit about certain scenarios. But a good fixture for City, I suppose, against a Nuno side, I suppose. But I think there are better options this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rest of the fixtures, the options to own, but I don't think any offer a sort of captaincy shout in for a differential. So, for the game week 1 captaincy video, it's going to be quite a short one, really. Not just because Salah is so overwhelming favourite, but we don't have the vast array of stats to go on. We got last season's ones, but they're an indicator, like pre-season as well. So, but before we go, is there anything else you wanted to mention particularly about the captaincy, or just anything that we haven't covered?
I don't think so. I mean, just looking at the fixtures at the moment, Everton take on Southampton. Normally, you would at least kind of touch on that, but the fact Calvert-Lewin hasn't had a pre-season, I think Richarlison's back late after his summer. I don't think there's really any options there, to be honest. James, there's been talk of him going, so it's a shame we can't really kind of delve into that fixture a little bit more. But Villa at Watford, Watkins picked up a knock at the weekend. I think Ings looks like a good player to start with this week, but again, Salah's such a good option this week. It's really hard to talk about too many other options, especially mid-price ones.
Yeah, definitely. So the question is Salah the best game week 1 captain? On paper, yes. he is undoubtedly, especially with that fear of missing out driving many of our decisions. But there are other options. We're not, we're quite safe managers. But there are others out there who might want to take a bit of a risk. So we've given some options, hopefully. But for now, Tom, thanks so much for joining me. And I can say to you, I usually say to David this, but I'll say it to you now. And for the rest of this season, I'm going to say, Tom, good luck with your game week, Captain.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks for having me on.